This is Corey Franklin reporting from Chicago on past histories, people who have died recently who have been part of our history or part of our society. And tonight we're going to start out in Fennville, Michigan. Fennville is one of the small towns in southwestern Michigan. It's about 1,500 people, maybe a mile wide. It's located a couple miles east of the eastern shore of Lake Michigan, where the climate is very good for growing fruit. So it's a community of fruit growing and wine making in southwestern Michigan. It's not too far from the road that used to go between Detroit and Chicago, and where the tourists used to flock to the Lake Michigan shoreline, South Haven, Saugatuck. It's best described as your prototypical American small town. Like many small towns, Fennville in the wintertime is consumed with its athletics, and like many small towns, it had a star athlete, and their star athlete was Wes Leonard, a junior. As a freshman, Wes was one of the first freshmen to ever start a quarterback, and he was the star quarterback for the football team, and he was also star of their undefeated basketball team. And recently, the basketball team was playing their last conference game of the season, and here is the report on that game.
In Fennville tonight, Blackhawks ranked 6th in Class C with a 19-0 record, heading into the regular season finale against Bridgman. Well, Bridgman came out and built a 14-point lead. That's Michael Camp hits the floater. Second half, Fennville fights back. Got it rolling. Wes Leonard spin and the fadeaway. This game ends up going to overtime. In the OT, tied at 55. Leonard again. It's clear lane, takes it to the hoop, and he scores. Fennville wins at 57-55. Doing backflips there. They are 20-0.
What that announcer didn't know is that right after the game, still in the gym, Wes Leonard collapsed and died an hour later of an undiagnosed heart condition. With his parents in the gym and with the gym still celebrating his overtime basket, Wes Leonard fell to the floor. Resuscitation was attempted. He was brought to the local hospital, and he was pronounced dead an hour later. This threw the entire community of Fennville into a shock, actually the entire southwestern Michigan community into a shock, especially because there had been no indication whatsoever that Wes Leonard had been sick. The most likely cause of death in cases like this is an undiagnosed cardiomyopathy, that is an irregular enlargement to the heart that can cause sudden death at any time. And this happens occasionally during or right after an athletic event, and it's obviously a very tragic and unexpected thing when it happens, and there's really no good way to screen for it. Some doctors in Italy have tried to do special testing on it, but as of right now, there's no good way to screen for it. So the best known case of this was the case of Hank Gathers from Loyola Marymount. Hank Gathers was the country's leading scorer and rebounder during the 1990 NCAA season, when at the end of the season, actually right around this time of year, he collapsed and died on the court also. One of his teammates, Bo Kimball, actually paid a visit to the Fennville High team after Wes Leonard's death. Here's the reaction from one of Wes Leonard's teammates and then from his coach in the hours after his death.
I didn't know why he had collapsed or anything. When he collapsed, they wanted the team in the locker room. And Wes, like I said, he was my best friend. And I didn't want anything to happen to him, so when I got in the locker room, I just cried. I couldn't hold it back.
He was part of my family, like these guys are, and his family's part of my family, and it's like just losing someone so close that I can't believe it's kind of all happened like this.
In a final tribute to Wes Leonard, the young athlete from Fennville High, the poem by the great English poet A.E. Housman, To an Athlete Dying Young. The time you won your town the race, we cheered you through the marketplace. Man and boy stood cheering by, and home we brought you shoulder high. Today, the road all runners come, shoulder high we bring you home, and set you at your threshold down, townsman of a stiller town. Smart lad, to be slipped betimes away from fields where glory does not stay, and early though the laurel grows, it withers quicker than the rose. Eyes the shady night is shut, cannot see the record cut, and silence sounds no worse than cheers after earth has stopped the years. Now you will not swell the rout of lads that wore their honors out, runners whom renown outran, and the name died before the man. So set before its echoes fade, the fleet foot on the sill of shade, and hold to the low lintel up, the still defended challenge cup. And round that early laureled head will flock to gaze the strengthless dead, and find unwithered on its curls the garland briefer than a girl's. To his family and everyone in Fennville, from listeners here and everywhere around the world, goodbye, Wes Leonard. We're going to close tonight with Johnny Preston. And Johnny Preston was a rockabilly singer back in Louisiana, Texas in the late 50s, early 60s. And he was friends with a guy named J.P. Richardson. That name might not mean anything to you, but this name probably will.
Hello, baby. Yeah, this is the Big Bopper speaking.
That's right, J.P. Richardson was the Big Bopper who died in the 1959 plane crash with Ritchie Valens and Buddy Holly. Before he died in late 1958, he wrote a song for Johnny Preston. And on the song, he did some of the backup singing along with another guy who would become famous later, George Jones. George Jones, famous country singer, married to Tammy Wynette, for a while at least.
He stopped loving her today.
Yeah, George did stop loving Tammy. Anyway, back to the story. J.P. Richardson, the Big Bopper, died in that 1959 plane crash with Buddy Holly and Ritchie Valens. About a year later, the song that he wrote for Johnny Preston was released with J.P. Richardson and George Jones singing in the background. That song became the #1 hit in the country. It was actually the second #1 of the decade of the 60s after Marty Robbins' El Paso. Extremely popular song, #1 for almost a month, January 1960. Just recently, Susie Rotolo, Bob Dylan's first girlfriend in New York, died, and we'll be doing her in a future show. And if you like to play the 6 Degrees of Separation, we have Susie Rotolo to Bob Dylan. Before he came to New York, Bob Dylan played with Bobby V. Bobby V took over for Buddy Holly after the plane crash. Buddy Holly to J.P. Richardson to Johnny Preston. On that note, we're going to close. I want to thank my producer, Sid Tepps. And before we close, a little bit of Johnny Preston's gold record winner. Not politically correct. I don't think it would come out today, but it's a nice tribute to Johnny Preston, who is now in that happy hunting ground with the Big Bopper, J.P. Richardson, and Buddy Holly, and all the rest of our rock stars up in rock and roll heaven. Here's a little bit of your classic rock and roll story of unrequited love with a little bit of a twist, Running Bear.
He couldn't swim the raging river, 'cause the river was too wide. He couldn't reach little white dove waiting on the other side. In the moonlight he could see her throwing kisses across the way. Her little heart was beating faster, waiting there for a brave running bear. Love little white dove with a love big as the sky. Running bear, love little white dove with a love that couldn't die. Running bear dove in the water, little white dove did the same, and they swam out to each other. Through the swirling stream they came. As their hand touched and their lips met, the raging river pulled them down. Now they'll always be together in that happy hunting ground. Running bear, love little white dove with a love big as the sky. Running bear, love little white dove with a love that couldn't die.